The hot water felt like liquid heaven against Zara's aching shoulders. 3 weeks of intensive deep-sea sample collection had left every muscle in her body protesting, and the research station's sonic shower was her only respite. She closed her eyes, letting the perfectly calibrated temperature wash away the day's frustrations. The Meridian Research Station wasn't exactly the luxury posting she'd imagined when she'd signed up for the Interstellar Marine Biology Exchange program. Shared facilities, cramped quarters, and roommates from species she'd only read about in textbooks. Her current roommate situation was complicated. Keth Silverwind was unlike any being she'd ever encountered. The Aquarian stood nearly 7 feet tall, with skin that shifted between deep teal and silver depending on his mood, and gill slits along his neck that fluttered when he was concentrating. His hair looked like strands of sea kelp, flowing and moving as if underwater even in standard atmosphere. Most striking were his eyes, large, luminous, and the color of deep ocean trenches. He was also incredibly, frustratingly polite. Always asking if she needed anything, offering to help with her equipment, making sure she had enough space in their shared laboratory. It should have been endearing, but instead it made her hyper-aware of every interaction, every accidental brush of fingers when they reached for the same instrument. Zara had spent the last month trying to ignore the way her heart rate spiked whenever he smiled at her, those pearl-white teeth flashing against his oceanic complexion. Interspecies attraction was nothing new. The galaxy was full of stories about humans falling for various alien species. But the Aquarians were supposed to be biochemically incompatible with humans. Their reproductive cycles, their social structures, even their concept of personal relationships were so different that the xenobiologists had classified them as romantically inert regarding human interaction. So why did she find herself stealing glances at his graceful movements as he worked? Why did she notice the way his gills fluttered when he laughed at her terrible jokes about marine life? The shower's sonic waves intensified, working out a particularly stubborn knot between her shoulder blades. Zara sighed in relief, reaching up to massage her neck. That's when her foot slipped on the wet floor. Time seemed to slow as she felt herself falling backward, her arms windmilling uselessly as gravity claimed her. The shower stall's walls were too far to catch, and she braced herself for painful impact with the hard floor. Instead, she found herself caught in strong, scaled arms that shimmered with an unexpected blue-green luminescence. Zara. Are you injured? Keth's voice was deeper than usual, roughened with concern. His normally teal skin was now glowing with patterns she'd never seen before, intricate spirals and waves that pulsed along his arms and what she could see of his chest through his hastily thrown-on shirt. She was pressed against him, her wet hair soaking into his clothes, his arms wrapped securely around her waist and shoulders. The scent of him was overwhelming, like ocean spray and something uniquely alien that made her head spin. His eyes, usually calm pools of blue-green, were now bright with silver flecks that seemed to dance in the light. I'm okay, she managed, though she made no move to step away. She couldn't. Not when he was looking at her like she was something precious he'd almost lost. Your skin, she whispered, watching the mesmerizing patterns flow across his arms. It's beautiful. Keth's gills fluttered rapidly, and the bioluminescent display intensified. You should not be seeing this, he said quietly, but he didn't release her. My people, we do not display the courting patterns to other species. Courting patterns? Zara's scientific mind latched onto the term even as her body remained acutely aware of every point where they touched. It is automatic response. When we feel. He struggled with the words, his English suddenly uncertain. When we feel strong attraction, emotional connection. The bioluminescence, it shows our intentions, our desires. Usually only to compatible mates. But I'm human, Zara said, confusion coloring her voice. The compatibility studies said. The compatibility studies were wrong. Keth's admission came out in a rush. I have known since the first day we met. Your scent, your presence, the way my body responds, it is as if you were born Aquarian yourself. Zara stared up at him, processing this revelation. The glowing patterns on his skin were hypnotic, and she found herself tracing one with her fingertip. The moment she made contact, the light intensified, and Keth drew in a sharp breath. "Does it hurt?" she asked, concerned. "No," he said, his voice rough. "It feels incredible. No one has ever touched the courting patterns before. I did not know it would be so intense." Zara supplied, because the simple touch had sent waves of sensation through her own body as well. "Yes." His eyes searched her face. "Zara, I must ask, what you are feeling, is it merely curiosity? Scientific interest? Because for my people, this display, this response, it is not casual." Zara considered lying, deflecting with humor or professional distance. It would be easier, safer. But the hope and vulnerability in his luminous eyes stopped her. "It's not curiosity," she admitted. "I've been attracted to you since day one. I thought I was going crazy, you're supposed to be incompatible with humans. But I can't stop thinking about you, can't stop noticing everything about you." The patterns on Keth's skin pulsed brighter, and a slow smile spread across his features. "Then perhaps the scientists need to revise their theories." "Perhaps they do," Zara agreed, reaching up to cup his face with her palm. The moment her skin contacted the glowing marks on his cheek, both of them gasped. The sensation was electric, intimate in a way she'd never experienced. "This is unprecedented," Keth murmured, leaning into her touch. "Interspecies compatibility at this level, we should document it, study the physiological responses." Later, Zara said firmly, surprising herself with her boldness. "Right now, I just want to understand what's happening between us." Keth's smile was radiant. "I would like that very much." They stood there in the aftermath of the shower incident, still wrapped in each other's arms, both glowing now, him with bioluminescent patterns, her with the flush of attraction and possibility. The research station hummed around them, full of beings from dozens of species, but in that moment, they were the only two people in the universe. "So," Zara said eventually, "I suppose we should probably figure out what to tell the housing administration about compatible roommates." Keth's laugh was like the sound of waves on distant shores. "I believe we have plenty of evidence to support a revision of their policies." As they finally, reluctantly separated, Zara caught sight of herself in the mirror. Her hair was still damp, her cheeks flushed, and her eyes bright with newfound possibility. Behind her, Keth's bioluminescent patterns were slowly fading to a soft, steady glow that seemed to pulse in rhythm with her own heartbeat. The galaxy, she realized, was about to become a much more interesting place. Finn Reyes had always been a night owl, but 3 months aboard the Meridian Research Station had turned his sleep schedule completely upside down. The artificial day-night cycles never quite synced with his internal clock, leaving him wide awake at what the station considered 0300 hours. Which was how he found himself padding through the corridors in his pajama pants and station-issued sleep shirt, heading for the communal kitchen with hopes of finding something to help him sleep. The kitchen was his sanctuary on this floating tin can. As the station's head chef, he'd fought tooth and nail to get proper equipment installed, real ovens instead of just replicators, a spice garden, even a small fermentation chamber for his sourdough starter. The administration had initially balked at the expense, but after tasting his first week's menu, they'd signed off on every request. Cooking was the one thing that felt normal in this sea of alien colleagues and bizarre schedules. No matter what species he was feeding, the fundamentals remained the same: fresh ingredients, proper technique, and a healthy dose of love. What he hadn't expected was to find someone already in his kitchen. She was tall and ethereally beautiful, with skin that seemed to absorb and reflect light in equal measure, shifting between pearl and silver depending on the angle. Her hair flowed like liquid moonlight down to her waist, and her eyes were the deep purple of twilight skies. She wore a flowing nightgown that seemed to be made of the same light-catching material as her skin. Nick Starwhisper, his roommate for the past month. Cultural anthropologist from Luna Prime, studying interspecies social dynamics. and currently standing at his prep counter with what appeared to be a half-eaten jar of pickles. Oh. She turned at the sound of his footsteps, and Finn caught his breath. In the kitchen's soft lighting, she was luminous. Literally, her skin gave off a faint glow that intensified around her eyes and fingertips. Finn, I apologize. I could not sleep, and I thought perhaps food might help, but your earth preserves are unusual. Finn grinned, padding over to take the pickle jar from her hands. Yeah, pickles aren't exactly a midnight snack for most people. Especially not straight from the jar. He noticed how her fingers lingered against his when he took the container, and how her glow seemed to pulse slightly at the contact. What do Lunarians usually eat when they can't sleep? Moon nectar, Nick said, settling onto one of the stools at the prep counter. A sweet drink made from night-blooming flowers that only open under our planet's triple moonlight. It has natural sedative properties. She paused, looking almost shy. I have been craving it terribly since arriving here. Homesick? Finn asked gently, already moving to his spice cabinet. His fingers found the chamomile, lavender, and a few other herbs he'd been experimenting with. I can't make moon nectar, but maybe I can make something that'll help you sleep. And taste better than pickles. Her laugh was like silver bells. That would be most kind. I confess, I have been curious about human cuisine. Your cooking smells are intriguing. Finn started pulling ingredients from various cabinets and cold storage units. My abuela always said that food is love made visible. Doesn't matter what planet you're from, everyone needs comfort food. He glanced at her as he set water to boil. Tell me about Luna Prime. What's it like? As he worked, Nix began to describe her homeworld, the crystal cities that rose like flowers toward the triple moons, the gardens of bioluminescent plants that provided both beauty and sustenance, the way her people celebrated the nightly conjunction when all three moons aligned. Her voice was melodic, rising and falling like poetry, and Finn found himself mesmerized by more than just her words. Every time she gestured, her skin would shimmer. When she laughed at his stories about learning to cook from his grandmother, the glow around her eyes intensified. And when he accidentally brushed her hand while reaching for the honey, both of them froze at the jolt of something that passed between them. Your skin, Finn said quietly, watching the way the light seemed to dance under her surface. Does it always do that? Nix looked down at her hands, and he could see her pulse quicken in the rhythmic brightening of her glow. Not always. Lunarian physiology is tied to our emotional states. The bioluminescence responds to strong feelings, joy, fear, excitement. She trailed off, not meeting his eyes. Attraction? Finn supplied gently. Her glow flared bright enough to illuminate the entire kitchen for a moment before she managed to dim it back down. I should not be, it is not appropriate. The cultural exchange program has strict guidelines about interpersonal relationships between species. Screw the guidelines, Finn said, surprising himself with his vehemence. I've been attracted to you since day one, Nix. I thought maybe it was just me being lonely, being so far from home. But every time you smile, every time you get excited about some piece of research and start glowing. God, you're the most beautiful thing I've ever seen. The tea kettle chose that moment to whistle, breaking the tension. Finn turned to prepare their drinks, his hands shaking slightly as he combined the herbs he'd selected. Behind him, he could hear Nix's breathing quicken, could see the reflection of her intensified glow on the metallic surfaces around them. Finn, she said softly. May I ask you something? Anything, he replied, not turning around. He was afraid if he looked at her right now, he'd do something stupid like kiss her. In Lunarian culture, we have a concept called soullight, the idea that certain beings can see and respond to our true luminescence, not just the surface glow. It is said that when we find such a person, our light calls to theirs across any distance. Her voice grew quieter. I have been glowing constantly since we became roommates. Even when you are not present, even when I am sleeping. My body thinks, it believes. Finn turned around slowly, two steaming mugs in his hands. What does it believe? That you are my soul-light match. The words came out in a rush, and her entire body flared with brilliant silver radiance before settling into a steady, warm glow. Which should be impossible. Humans do not have compatible bioluminescence. You cannot see light patterns the way my people do. Finn set the mugs down and stepped closer to her. Maybe I can't see light patterns, but I can see you, Nyx. Really see you. The way you get excited about discovering some new cultural quirk, how you always make sure everyone feels included in conversations, the way you hum these little melodies when you think no one's listening. He reached out hesitantly, stopping just short of touching her glowing cheek. May I? She nodded, eyes wide and luminous. The moment his palm made contact with her skin, the world exploded into sensation. Her glow intensified until it was almost blinding, and Finn gasped as he felt something incredible. He could actually see the patterns she was talking about. Swirling, complex designs that spoke of desire and wonder and a deep, soul-deep connection that transcended species barriers. How is this possible? Nyx whispered, leaning into his touch. I don't know, Finn admitted, using his other hand to cup her face. But I don't care. This feels right. Like coming home. She stood from the stool, closing the distance between them until they were almost touching. The tea will get cold, she murmured, but made no move to step away. The tea can wait, Finn replied, stroking his thumb across her cheekbone and watching the light patterns dance in response. This, whatever this is, it's more important. Nyx's hands came up to rest on his chest, and he could feel warmth spreading from her touch through his entire body. On Luna Prime, when two people discover they are soul-light matches, they perform a bonding ritual under the triple moons. It is very intimate. We don't have triple moons here, Finn said, his voice rough with emotion. No, Nyx agreed, her glow pulsing in rhythm with his heartbeat. But perhaps we can create our own light. This time, when Finn leaned down to kiss her, she met him halfway. The moment their lips touched, her luminescence flared brilliant and warm, bathing the entire kitchen in silver radiance. Finn could taste moonlight and starfire, could feel the way her light seemed to wrap around him like a living thing. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Nyx's glow had settled into patterns that were hypnotically beautiful, waves and spirals that seemed to tell a story of connection and desire. The research teams are going to have a field day with this, Finn said, resting his forehead against hers. Nyx laughed, the sound like distant music. Let them research. We have more important things to explore. Like what? Like whether soul-light bonding works the same way with humans as it does with my people, she said, her eyes dancing with mischief and promise. It is, after all, a very thorough anthropological study. Finn grinned, pulling her closer. I love a woman dedicated to her research. As they stood there in the glowing kitchen, surrounded by the scents of herbs and honey and possibility, neither of them noticed that the tea had indeed gone cold. Some discoveries, they were learning, were worth far more than a perfect cup of chamomile. River Chin Martinez had always been most comfortable when she was flying. Whether it was the old crop duster she'd learned on back on Terra Nueva, the sleek courier ship she'd piloted through the Outer Rim, or the advanced training vessels here at Meridian Station, if it had engines and could break Atmo, River could fly it. What she wasn't comfortable with was floating helplessly in zero-G while her Etherean flight instructor watched her flail like a fish out of water. Relax your shoulders, Talon Crystalwing called from across the training bay, his voice carrying easily through the comm system. You're fighting the weightlessness instead of embracing it. Easy for him to say. Etherians were practically born for zero gravity. Talon moved through the weightless environment like he was dancing, his four arms gracefully propelling him in perfect arcs, his iridescent wings folded against his back but occasionally flaring for minute course corrections. His skin shifted through subtle color changes, currently a calming blue-green that River had learned meant he was in teaching mode. I'm a pilot, not a dancer, River muttered, trying to orient herself toward the target markers. The zero-G maneuvering course was supposed to prepare human pilots for emergency situations where artificial gravity failed. In practice, it mostly made River feel like an idiot. "Flying and dancing are not so different," Talon replied, gracefully rotating to face her. His large, multifaceted eyes caught the light of the training bay, creating tiny rainbows across his features. "Both require understanding of movement, rhythm, flow. You pilot a ship beautifully, I have seen your scores. But you pilot with technology, with instruments. Here, you must pilot with your body." River tried to follow his advice, relaxing her muscles and letting herself drift toward the first marker. For a moment, it almost worked. Then she overcorrected, sent herself spinning, and ended up upside down relative to the bay's orientation. "Breathe," Talon said, and suddenly he was beside her, not touching but close enough that she could see the intricate patterns that decorated his skin. Up close, she could see that what looked like simple color changes were actually complex designs that flowed and shifted like living art. "Center yourself. Feel the space around you. How do you make it look so easy?" River asked, genuinely curious. In the 3 weeks they'd been doing these sessions, she'd never seen him struggle with any aspect of three-dimensional movement. "My people evolved in the upper atmosphere of a gas giant," Talon explained, using 2 of his arms to demonstrate a graceful spiraling motion. "We learn to fly before we learn to walk. Gravity, for us, is the unnatural state." As he moved, River found herself mesmerized by the fluid way his body worked. Etherians were tall and lean, built for flight, with elongated limbs and those gorgeous gossamer wings that could span 12 feet when fully extended. Talon's skin was currently shifting through shades of blue and silver, and she realized she'd started to recognize some of his color patterns. Blue-green for teaching, deep purple when he was concentrating, silver when he was amused by her clumsy attempts at zero-G maneuvering. "What color are you when you're attracted to someone?" The question slipped out before River could stop herself. Talon's movement stuttered, and for the first time since she'd known him, he looked genuinely flustered. His skin flashed through several rapid color changes, deep purple, bright silver, and then something she'd never seen before, a warm gold that seemed to emanate from within. That is not typically discussed in training scenarios," he said carefully. "Sorry," River said quickly. "I didn't mean to make you uncomfortable. I've just been wondering about a lot of things." "What things?" Talon asked, his color settling into a curious pale blue. River took a breath, deciding to be honest. "About whether you think I'm a complete disaster as a pilot. About whether these training sessions are as torturous for you as they are for me. About whether you've noticed that I can't seem to concentrate on anything when you're demonstrating maneuvers because I'm too busy watching the way you move." The gold color flared bright across Talon's skin, and his wings fluttered despite the lack of atmosphere to catch. "River. And about whether it's completely unprofessional of me to wonder what it would be like to kiss someone with 4 arms, River continued, her own cheeks burning with embarrassment and boldness in equal measure. Talon's multifaceted eyes went wide, and his entire body shifted to that warm gold color. "You have been thinking about kissing me?" "Pretty much constantly," River admitted. "Which is probably why I keep crashing into things during these sessions." For a long moment, they floated in silence, facing each other in the vast training bay. Then Talon began to laugh, a musical sound that seemed to come from somewhere deep in his chest. "I have been wondering the same thing," he confessed, his skin now pulsing with gold and silver patterns. "About kissing someone with only 2 arms. About whether humans can taste the atmospheric changes in a kiss the way my people can. About whether this attraction I feel is normal or if I am, what is the human phrase, losing my mind." "You're attracted to me?" River asked, hardly daring to believe it. "Profoundly," Talon replied, moving closer. "It is why I volunteered to be your instructor, though I told myself it was merely professional interest. It is why I extend our sessions longer than necessary. It is why my skin colors have been erratic whenever you are near." They were close enough now that River could see her reflection multiplied in his compound eyes, could smell the ozone and starlight scent that seemed to cling to his skin. The regs say fraternization between instructor and student is forbidden, River said softly. The regulations were written by beings who never had to teach zero-G maneuvering to someone whose smile makes them forget how to fly, Talon replied, reaching out with one of his 4 hands to cup her face. The moment his skin touched hers, something extraordinary happened. River had always been sensitive to electromagnetic fields, a useful skill for a pilot, but touching Talon was like plugging into the station's main power grid. Every nerve ending came alive, and suddenly she could feel the subtle electrical currents that Etherians used for navigation, could sense the magnetic fields that helped them orient in 3-dimensional space. "Oh," she gasped, as understanding flooded through her. "That's how you do it. You don't just see the space around you, you feel it." Talon's eyes widened in amazement. "You can sense the fields? But that should be impossible. Humans do not have the necessary neural pathways." "Apparently I do," River said, marveling at the way she could suddenly perceive the training bay in completely new dimensions. "Or maybe being close to you is changing something. There are legends," Talon said slowly, his other 3 hands now framing her face, "of Etherians who could share their spatial senses with bonded mates. But only with other Etherians. Never with aliens?" River supplied. "With anyone outside our species," Talon corrected gently. "River, what you are experiencing should not be possible." "Seems to be a lot of that going around lately," River murmured, thinking of the rumors she'd heard about some of the other interspecies roommate pairings on the station. That's when the training bay's artificial gravity system chose to malfunction. The sudden gravitational fluctuation sent them both spinning, but instead of the chaotic tumbling River expected, something magical happened. Connected by Talon's touch, she could feel his instinctive response to the changing forces, could sense exactly how to move her body to complement his movements. Together, they flowed through the disruption like they'd been dancing partners for years. When the gravity stabilized, they found themselves pressed together, her arms around his neck, his 4 arms wrapped securely around her waist and shoulders. They were both breathing hard, and Talon's skin was now a brilliant mixture of gold and silver that pulsed in rhythm with both their heartbeats. "That was..." River began. "Impossible," Talon finished. "Beautiful. Terrifying. All of the above," River agreed. She could still feel the electromagnetic connection between them, like a constant gentle current that made her hyper-aware of his every movement, his every breath. "So what do we do now?" "Now," Talon said, his voice rough with emotion, "I believe we need to have a conversation with the station administrators about updating their compatibility assessments." "After," River said firmly. "After what?" "After you kiss me," she said, pulling him closer. "Because I've been wondering about that for 3 weeks, and I'm not waiting another minute to find out." Talon's laugh was pure joy. "As you wish, my imperfect student." When their lips met, River felt like she was flying for the first time all over again. The electromagnetic connection flared between them, and suddenly she understood flight not as technology or physics, but as pure sensation, pure freedom. Talon's 4 arms held her securely while his wings spread wide around them, creating a cocoon of iridescent beauty in the stark training bay. When they finally broke apart, River realized she was glowing, not with bioluminescence like some species, but with something else, something that seemed to respond to Talon's electrical field and amplify it. "Your turn to explain something impossible," Talon said, wonderment in his voice as he traced the subtle luminescence that now outlined her skin. "I think," River said, settling more comfortably in his embrace, "we're going to be rewriting a lot of textbooks." As they floated together in the aftermath of the gravity malfunction, surrounded by the gentle hum of the station's systems and the soft glow of their unexpected connection, River realized that some of the best flying happened when you finally stopped fighting the forces around you and learned to dance with them instead. The training bay's intercom crackled to life. "All personnel, please report any equipment malfunctions or unusual phenomena to your section supervisors." River and Talon looked at each other and began to laugh. Should we mention that we seem to have developed a psychic flight connection? River asked. Perhaps we should start with requesting a different instructor-student assignment, Talon replied diplomatically. Good point. Hard to maintain professional boundaries when you can feel each other's thoughts. Indeed, Talon agreed, his skin shifting to a warm, contented gold. Though I must say, I am looking forward to exploring the full extent of this phenomenon. River grinned, finally understanding why her grandmother had always said that the best adventures happened when you stopped trying to control everything and started trusting the wind. Part 4, Healing Touch. The wrench slipped just as Sage Thompson applied pressure to the stubborn bolt, and she felt the sharp bite of metal against flesh before she saw the blood. A creative string of curses echoed through the maintenance tunnel as she pulled her hand back, examining the gash across her palm. Of all the stupid, clumsy, she muttered, wrapping her hand in the cleaning rag she'd been using. The cut was deeper than she'd like, definitely going to need more than a basic first aid kit. She'd volunteered for the late-night maintenance shift because she couldn't sleep anyway. 3 weeks of sharing quarters with Ember Goldenheart had turned her sleep schedule into a disaster. Not because her Pyrothian roommate was loud or inconsiderate, quite the opposite. Ember was quiet, thoughtful, and so devastatingly beautiful that Sage spent most nights lying awake trying not to think about the way firelight seemed to dance under her skin, or how her laugh sounded like wind chimes in a gentle breeze. Pyrothians were supposed to be emotionally incompatible with humans. Their entire culture was built around passionate intensity, love, anger, joy, sorrow, all experienced at levels that would overwhelm most other species. The xenopsychologists had classified them as emotionally hazardous for human interaction, warning that prolonged exposure could lead to psychological burnout. Which didn't explain why Sage felt more centered and calm around Ember than she had in years. The bleeding wasn't stopping, and Sage reluctantly admitted she needed medical attention. She made her way back through the station corridors, leaving a small trail of red drops despite her makeshift bandage. The medical bay was dimly lit for night cycle, but she could see someone moving around in the back area, probably whoever was on emergency call. She was about to announce herself when a familiar voice called out. Sage. What has happened? Ember appeared from behind one of the diagnostic stations, and Sage's breath caught as it always did. Pyrothians were tall and elegant, with skin that looked like polished copper shot through with veins of gold. Ember's hair was the deep red of banked coals, and her eyes were the warm amber of flames. Right now, those eyes were filled with concern as she took in Sage's bloodied hand. Just a stupid accident, Sage said, trying to sound casual. Thought I'd come get it patched up before I bleed all over the station. Ember moved toward her with fluid grace, her natural body heat warming the air around them. Let me see. She gently took Sage's injured hand in both of hers, unwrapping the makeshift bandage. The moment her skin made contact, Sage felt a warm tingling sensation spread up her arm. This is quite deep, Ember said, her voice soft with worry. You may require synthetic skin grafting. It's not that bad, Sage protested, though she had to admit the cut looked worse under the medical bay's bright lights. Sage Thompson, you are always minimizing your injuries, Ember said with fond exasperation. I have watched you ignore pain that would incapacitate others. But infection in the extremities can be serious, especially in the closed environment of a space station. Sage found herself staring at the way Ember's skin seemed to glow with internal warmth as she examined the wound. How do you know I ignore injuries? Because I pay attention to you, Ember replied simply, then seemed to realize what she'd admitted. The golden veins in her skin flared brighter for a moment before she controlled them. As your roommate. For safety purposes. Right, Sage said, though something in Ember's tone suggested there was more to it. So what's the verdict, Doc? I am not a doctor, Ember corrected. But my people have natural healing abilities. If you would permit me. Healing abilities? Sage asked, curious despite the throbbing in her hand. Ember's skin flushed with more gold, the pattern spreading down her arms to her hands. Pyrotheans can accelerate cellular regeneration in others through direct contact. It is how we treat injuries in our own people. But I have never attempted it with a human. What's the worst that could happen? Sage asked with a grin that was only slightly strained. The physiological differences could cause rejection, burning, or... Ember trailed off, looking troubled. Or it could create a bioenergetic link between us, Ember said quietly. Healing bonds, in my culture, are intimate. They require emotional as well as physical connection. Sage felt her heart rate pick up. How intimate? The healer must be able to feel the patient's pain as their own, must care deeply enough about their well-being to share life force. It is not casual. Ember's eyes met hers. Among my people, healing bonds often lead to permanent mating. And you're worried about that happening with me? Sage asked, trying to keep her voice light. Ember's skin flared brilliant gold. I am worried that it has already begun to happen, and the healing will simply make it impossible to ignore. The admission hung between them in the quiet medical bay. Sage stared at this incredible woman who had just confessed to feeling the same impossible attraction that had been keeping her awake at night. Ember, she said softly. I can't feel my fingers anymore. I think you should try the healing thing. Without another word, Ember guided Sage to one of the medical tables and had her sit down. She positioned herself between Sage's knees, holding the injured hand gently in both of hers. This may feel intense, Ember warned. Try to relax and let the energy flow. The moment Ember's healing gift activated, Sage understood what she meant by intense. Heat spread from the Pyrothean's hands into the wound, but it wasn't the burning heat she might have expected. It was warm like sunlight, like being wrapped in the perfect blanket on a cold day. More than that, she could feel Ember's emotions through the connection, concern, care, and underneath it all, a deep well of affection that took her breath away. Oh, Sage gasped, as her pain seemed to transfer into Ember's body. She watched the Pyrothean's face tighten as she absorbed the injury's trauma, watched the golden veins in her skin pulse brighter as she poured her own life energy into healing. I can feel. Sage began, then stopped, overwhelmed by the sensation of Ember's presence in her mind and body. What can you feel? Ember asked, her voice strained with effort but curious. You, Sage said simply. Your emotions, your everything. How is this possible? It should not be, Ember replied, echoing what seemed to be becoming the station's unofficial motto. Humans do not have the neural pathways for psychic bonding. But I can feel you as well, your strength, your stubbornness, your... My what? Your love, Ember finished quietly. You care for me. Deeply. Despite what you have been told about my species. Sage looked down at her hand and was amazed to see the wound was almost completely healed, leaving only a thin pink line. But more importantly, she could still feel Ember's presence in her mind, warm and comforting and absolutely right. The regulations say Pyrotheans are too emotionally intense for humans, Sage said. The regulations are wrong, Ember replied firmly. What I feel from you is not overwhelming, it is completing. Like finding the other half of my soul. Sage reached up with her newly healed hand to cup Ember's face, marveling at the way the golden patterns in her skin responded to the touch. So what happens now? Now, Ember said, leaning into the caress, we acknowledge that the universe is far more complex than anyone imagined. And that sometimes, the most important discoveries happen when we stop listening to what we're supposed to feel and start trusting what we do feel. I love you, Sage said, the words falling easily from her lips now that the healing bond had made lying impossible. And I love you, Ember replied, her entire body now glowing with golden warmth. Completely. Permanently. In ways that will probably require us to rewrite several academic papers. When Ember leaned down to kiss her, Sage felt like she was being warmed from the inside out. The healing bond flared between them, and she realized that she was glowing too now, not with Ember's golden fire, but with her own light, silver and blue like starlight. We're going to cause quite a stir, Sage murmured against Ember's lips. Let them stir, Ember replied, holding her close. Some bonds are worth any amount of scientific controversy. As they sat together in the medical bay, wrapped in each other's arms and the warm glow of their impossible connection, Sage realized that sometimes the best healing happened when you stopped trying to fix things logically and started trusting your heart to know what you needed. Part 5, Synchronized Hearts. The emergency klaxons began wailing at 0347 station time, jerking everyone aboard Meridian Station from sleep into crisis mode. In 4 different quarters, 4 different couples found themselves facing the same impossible choice: follow evacuation protocols that would separate them, or trust in the connections they discovered and face the emergency together. Zara and Keth were the first to reach the main command center, their research backgrounds making them natural first responders. Keth's bioluminescent patterns were strobing in complex configurations, his species equivalent of high stress, while Zara's scientific mind raced through potential scenarios. What's the situation? Zara asked Lieutenant Park, the night duty officer. Cascading system failures throughout the station, Park replied, his voice tight with controlled panic. Started with the primary power grid, now it's affecting life support, navigation, even artificial gravity in some sections. We've lost contact with 3 sections entirely. Keth moved to the environmental controls, his scaled fingers dancing over the displays. The pattern suggests electromagnetic interference, but the source is internal. Something is disrupting the station's entire electrical grid. Could it be sabotage? Zara wondered aloud. Or something far more interesting, came a voice from the doorway. Nyx Starwhisper glided into the command center, her skin glowing with agitation, followed closely by Finn, who looked like he'd thrown on clothes in a hurry. What do you mean? Park asked. Nyx consulted her data pad, her luminescence pulsing as she concentrated. I've been monitoring unusual bioelectromagnetic readings throughout the station for the past week. Coinciding with reports of impossible interspecies compatibilities. Finn moved to stand beside her, and everyone in the room noticed how Nyx's glow immediately stabilized and intensified when he was near. We think the pairings aren't just emotional or physical, he explained. They're creating new forms of bioenergy that the station's systems weren't designed to handle. The lights flickered ominously, and a new voice joined the conversation through the comm system. This is River in Training Base 7. We've got major gravitational anomalies up here, but Talon and I might have found something important. We're patching you through to the main display, Park said, fingers flying over his console. River's face appeared on the central screen, with Talon's four-armed form visible behind her. Both of them seemed to be surrounded by a subtle energy field that made the air shimmer. The electromagnetic disturbances aren't random, River explained. They're synchronized. Every time one of our bonded pairs experiences strong emotion, it sends a pulse through the station's systems. Bonded pairs? Zara repeated. That's what we're calling ourselves, Talon interjected, his skin shifting through rapid color changes. The traditional classifications don't apply anymore. We've formed connections that transcend species barriers. Another voice joined the conversation as Sage and Ember entered the command center, still glowing from their recent healing session. The medical base sensors have been going crazy, Sage reported. Every time Ember uses her healing abilities on me, it triggers system-wide surges. Ember nodded, her golden patterns pulsing steadily. The bonds we have formed are not merely emotional. They are creating new forms of bioelectromagnetic energy that your technology cannot process. Lieutenant Park looked around at the assembled couples, all of them displaying various forms of unusual luminescence or energy output. So you're saying that your relationships are overloading the station? Not overloading, Keth corrected, his own patterns now synchronized with Zara's heartbeat. Evolving. The station's systems are trying to adapt to energy patterns they've never encountered before. A violent shudder ran through the station, and several displays went dark. Adaptive or not, we're running out of time, Park said grimly. If the cascade continues, we'll lose life support within the hour. Then we need to stop fighting the synchronization and start working with it, Nick said suddenly, her anthropological mind putting pieces together. Instead of trying to suppress our bioenergy output, we should coordinate it. Coordinate how? Sage asked. Like a conductor leading an orchestra, Finn suggested, understanding where Nix was going. If our energy patterns are synchronized anyway, maybe we can direct them instead of letting them run wild. River's voice crackled through the calm. That might actually work. The electromagnetic fields Talon and I can perceive are all connected. It's like one massive neural network. But how do we coordinate something like that? Zara wondered. Ember stepped forward, her healing abilities giving her insight into the bioenergetic connections. Through physical contact. If we link our energy fields directly, we can create a stable resonance pattern. You're talking about all of us, connecting? Sage asked, a blush creeping up her cheeks. Not that kind of connecting, Ember said with a small smile. Simply forming a circuit. Like joining hands. Another shudder shook the station, more violent than the last. Do it, Park ordered. Whatever you're going to try, do it now. The four couples arranged themselves in a circle in the center of the command room. Zara took Keth's scaled hand in hers, immediately feeling the familiar pulse of his bioluminescent patterns. He reached out with his other hand to touch Nix's glowing skin, who clasped Finn's fingers while he connected to River through the Calm Link's haptic feedback system. The moment the circuit was complete, the command center filled with an incredible display of light and energy. Zara's human bioelectricity amplified Keth's Aquarian bioluminescence, which resonated with Nix's Lunarian soullight, which harmonized with Finn's enhanced electromagnetic field, which synchronized with River and Talon's psychic flight connection, which stabilized Sage and Ember's healing bond. Instead of chaotic interference, the combined energy formed a beautiful, complex pattern that pulsed in perfect rhythm with the station's operational systems. The emergency klaxons fell silent. The light steadied. Throughout Meridian Station, systems that had been failing began to stabilize and function more efficiently than they ever had before. Remarkable, Lieutenant Park breathed, staring at his displays. Power efficiency is up 30% across all systems. The bioelectromagnetic field you're generating is actually optimizing our technology. It appears, Keth said, his voice filled with wonder, that evolution works in ways we never imagined. So what happens now? River asked through the Calm Link. Now, Nick said, her anthropological training kicking in, we document everything. This changes our understanding of interspecies relationships, of biocompatibility, of consciousness itself. The research possibilities are endless, Zara agreed, her scientific excitement barely contained. But first, Sage interjected with a grin, we should probably figure out how to explain this to our supervisors. Ember laughed, her golden warmth spreading through the group connection. I believe the phrase is, we're going to need a bigger research grant. As the group gradually released their physical connections, the energy field didn't disappear, it simply settled into a stable background resonance that seemed to make the entire station hum with contentment. You know, Finn said thoughtfully, my grandmother always said that love finds a way. I don't think she was expecting it to involve rewriting the laws of physics. The universe, Talon observed, is far more creative than any of us imagined. 6 months later, Meridian Station had been officially redesignated as the first interspecies biocompatibility research center. The impossible couples had become the subject of intensive study, willing participants in research that was revolutionizing understanding of consciousness, connection, and the fundamental forces that bind living beings together. But late at night, when the research was done and the scientists had gone home, they were simply 4 couples who had found something rare and precious in the vast darkness of space, proof that love truly could transcend any barrier, even the boundaries between species. And sometimes, late at night when they all gathered in Finn's kitchen or floated together in the observation deck or worked side by side in the laboratories, their combined bioenergy would pulse in perfect synchronization, and every system on the station would hum a little more efficiently, a little more harmoniously. Love, it turned out, wasn't just an emotion. It was a force of nature, capable of creating new forms of energy, new possibilities, new ways of being that no one had ever dreamed possible. The galaxy, they all agreed, had become a much more interesting place.